Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Baka podcast.
Baka. It's amazing how every time you open your mouth, you prove you're an idiot.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Baka. We're an anime podcast. Every 2 weeks, we come together and discuss a anime that we've watched in a very book club style format. And then we turn our discussion over to our comment section, to our listeners, so that you can chime in and join in, because this is not just about what we think. This is about everyone sharing opinions in a respectful and Baka style. I mean that when we say that.
So mine is correct and yours is wrong.
Yeah. That's right. As compatible as respectful and Baka can be.
Love it.
So we had watched the second core of the first season of 86, known to some as the second season of 86, but basically it was episodes 12 through 23. We had watched the first half in our last podcast and discussed that. So we will be discussing the second half, along with spoilers eventually, what will happen through the whole thing. But before we get to the spoilers, before we even get to the reviews, I need to introduce my co-host. And first off, we have the flick to my Bug's Life. It's Jeremy. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I discovered a really cool podcast. They're called State of the Arc Podcast. And if you like video games and you like this book club format, you should give them a listen. They're really cool.
Do they owe us money? Did they steal our idea?
No. But I mean, genuinely, like I've listened to, they did a Vagrant Story playthrough. They did Final Fantasy VII. I haven't listened to that one yet, but they've done Final Fantasy VIII, which was really a shocker to me because I tried to play 8 a little bit and it just always turned me off. I never liked it. And so I decided I'd go ahead and give them a listen and see what they thought of it. And they did a really good job of like breaking it down. They try not to be spoilery, so as you go along, you're only getting what you're supposed to have played up to. And by the end of it, I'm actually inclined to be willing to try Final Fantasy VIII again, as much as I really didn't like it. But it's really cool. They do a good job bringing not just their opinions to the table, but they also bring some research to the table that they do on like the development history and who was on the team and any kind of like, in some cases, the tension or issues that might have led to certain decisions in the way that the game was designed. So.
Let's not plug too much about like research and like going the extra mile for your podcast. Right?
It's really cool though. I highly recommend them.
Is what is it? Is 8 the Gunblade one or is that 9?
Yeah, it's 8.
Oh, okay. So is that Squall?
Guess which one's my favorite Final Fantasy game?
I couldn't get into that one either. 9 was good. I actually really liked
awesome.
9.
Well,
10 is my favorite, all-time favorite.
Which one?
10.
Yeah.
10's number 2. Yeah. 8, 10, 7 for me.
Yeah? For me, it's 7 and 9 and Tactics.
Okay, so I love 2 and 5, but
2 was awesome. Yeah. Well, and then there's always 6. What numbers have we missed?
Right.
So I mentioned I'm doing the whole everything I had never played before, and 6 is one of them. 6 I have to play because I hear it's so good.
It's very operatic.
Man, 8's so fun. It's so wonky.
Well, apparently 8 was the first time that it was like not Hironobu Sakaguchi. It was he basically gave it over to the younger generation to just completely do what they wanted. And so they decided to make it a school thing because that's what they could identify with and what they could have a passion for. And later, of course, they did other things because the same team worked on 10 and 13. But yeah, 8 was like their first foray into it. And it has a distinctly different flavor from everything that came before, and 9, which was still Hironobu Sakaguchi.
There's a hook right there. Let's just going down the rabbit hole of 8. We gotta go. There's an anime to talk about. We'll talk later.
Yeah.
All right, so we have the Z to my ants. Jason, how you doing?
I tried a new game that I've been following for quite some time called Ghost Hunt. I watched. They've been posting on the Reddit gaming subreddit for quite some time. Their development progress. Um, it's it's basically prop hunt with a sweet twist where one team's a ghost and one team's a ghost hunters, and then the ghosts will like possess objects to like hide. And so it's very phasmophobia in that you get the tools from that game to like hunt them down. But then once you get discovered, you can either try and escape or you can try and fight back. But if the ghost hunters don't get all the ghosts before midnight, then the ghosts become like enraged and they all come back, even if they've been eliminated. And yeah, so
Cool.
it can be a little frustrating, but it's pretty good. I enjoyed myself with it.
There's a 4v1 Ghostbusters game coming out that seems very similar. And I saw the trailer for it. I'm like, wow, that makes complete sense. Like very much like Dead by Day. Yeah, Dead by Daylight, the game where you have four survivors and there's a killer trying to catch you. That kind of gameplay, but with Ghostbusters. It's like, yeah, that makes perfect sense. All right, and my name is Troy. I want to plug a podcast too. Yeah. I've been listening to the Sunny in Philadelphia podcast, where the three main guys from Sunny in Philadelphia, a show that I find very funny, sit and they talk about. Well, they try to talk about how they made each episode, but they barely remember anything. They usually just get off on random tangents. I really just enjoy watching three guys go through the creative process on a much smaller scale. I see what we do here when we collaborate and talk together, and that's how they work very similar to what we do with three guys. And so if two people like something and one person doesn't, they do the thing, or if one person likes something, the other two don't, they don't do it. And they just kind of work equally and have built their show from that. It is a delight to listen to them just ramble on about the creative process, especially since they are guys who like literally made their show with their own digital camera in their own backyards to start with. Wrote their own scripts, went to the network. Network's like, well, that's really cheap. Yeah, you can do it. Season 2, they said, if you get a celebrity to be on the show, we'll let you keep doing it. And so Danny DeVito joined. And it's fun to watch them talk about that kind of stuff. So that's what I've been listening to.
Do any of them play a Path of Exile? Because if not, I'm not sure that's a good podcast to listen to.
No, I don't think any of them are gamers.
So no RimWorld then either.
No RimWorld. No Final Fantasy 14. I've been playing Final Fantasy 14. The farthest I've gotten in MMO. Usually in an MMO, I'm like 2 weeks in, and I'm like, that was a lot of fetch quest. Final Fantasy, and it's just because it's Final Fantasy. There's still a lot of fetch quest, but
yeah. I crapped out after 2 weeks.
You put me on a chocobo. I'm a happy man. All right, let's talk about our anime. We're gonna do non-spoilers, what we thought about it. Again, we're specifically discussing the second half of 86 here, but there might be some other thoughts about the series as a whole. So, Jason, this had originally been your pick. So, what did you feel about this half of the season?
It's interesting because the first 3 episodes kind of threw me off because it almost didn't match the flavor of the first half. Definitely a flavor or a tone difference in those first 3 episodes, but it won me back real fast. One, combat's just beautiful. And the storytelling and character development and just making me care about these characters. They did a fantastic job. I'm having a tough time being upset with those first 3 episodes. So, I really enjoyed myself. I think if you haven't seen this anime yet, it's definitely on a top 15.
Oh, wow.
All right, Jeremy, what did you think?
So I didn't like it quite that much, but I did like it a lot for the same reasons. Also, it definitely does a great job of pulling the heartstrings. you should be able to like predict where it's going to go a little bit, or at least see where your heartstrings are going to be pulled. But it didn't matter. They still got me. And like Jason said, you know, at the beginning, I wasn't necessarily super happy with some of the decisions they made, especially because they really pivot in what they're talking about. You know, in the first season, they talk a lot about prejudice. That's kind of the, as Troy would say, the theme. And but in the second half,
No one else would ever call it a theme. Only Troy.
no, only
Stick with
Troy.
me.
You
In the,
jerk.
in the second half, it just kind of goes a different direction. But it's a compatible direction, and it's very satisfying. So definitely liked it.
It was rubbing me the wrong way through that first half of this core of the season. For what Jeremy just mentioned, I felt like the theme that we had been talking about, had been exploring, almost completely disappears. It shows its head now and then in little places. I was like, oh, that's awesome. That's interesting. We should, okay, it's gone. Moving on, I guess. It picks up a new theme really, really quick. And I was just, I kind of was checking out. And then I started buying into this new theme and where it was going. And by the end, I was hooked. When the emotional beats that Jeremy talked about, they were hitting me. I was hook, line, and sinker going with it. I was, okay, don't cry. I'm not going to cry. So yeah, it's a good season. I guess I need to just let my expectations go a little bit more. I blame. I can't. I don't want to say yet. I'll say in the spoiler section who I blame. There's someone to blame. There's someone, and it's not me.
Okay.
I am not to blame here.
It better
Is that
not
the
be
general
me,
life
'cause
principle.
No.
I will get in my car.
Not a person. All right. Your guys' thoughts on the new OP and ED?
A little disappointed in comparison to the first. I thought the visuals of this half were better. And I thought they told the story a little better. Music just was not as good for the OP and ED that I felt. The score in the show, though, was on point. Man, they know how to play an emotional beat with the music. Unlike
can
another
get
anime
eerie.
we watched specifically
Eerie.
about music.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I love the way they play with the ED. Sometimes they do just a standard black screen. Sometimes they play into it. Sometimes they do it like 4 minutes before the end of the episode. So yeah, I actually really enjoyed the variants on the ED.
Yeah. Same thing for me. Like when I first heard him episode 1, not really my cup of tea. They just weren't. They didn't measure up to the first season. The outro really, like, it just sounded like wailing and was off key. I really didn't like it. But but just like Jason said, the way they used it completely changed my mind. And by the end of the second season, I actually really like that song. When I hear it, all of the things that have happened in this season are loaded into that song, and it's perfect for it. For the intro specifically, though, for me, that imagery is, there are so many different ways to interpret it that I completely interpreted it incorrectly and had a completely incorrect perspective on what was going on. So I liked it for that, but I also am kind of a little bit resentful of that. So
I actually really loved that in the chat. Troy was like, "This reminds me of another movie, and I think it's going down this road." And he's like, "Yeah, I'm wrong. I'm totally wrong. It's,
Nope.
it's not happening. I mean, it might, but it's not. No, okay,
Again,
no.
I am not to blame. And I will lay the blame in the spoiler section.
Okay.
Very, very similar thoughts. I really liked the OP, but it did take me some time to win me over. I watched it every time. I watched the ED every time, and I didn't really get won over by the ED. When it's used in the story, though, it was great. Did they use the ED from the last half
That
as
was
well?
that was
Yes.
music that they did during the
Yes.
That was soundtrack.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yep.
For
Cool.
emotional beats.
When that played, I was like, yeah, this song's better.
Yeah.
That
Yep.
did happen. Yeah, so that's my thoughts. Same thoughts about the imagery as Jeremy though, but I'm sure we'll get into that when we complain.
Yeah.
All right, we are going to go into our spoiler section again. This is for episodes 12 through 23 of the first season of 86. But we will also be spoiling everything that's happened because we have assumed that you've either listened to or watched the first half. So please be aware of that if you're going to continue listening, and we hope you do. But if you do need to stop here, completely understand. Who needs to? Get out.
Definitely recommend you watch it first.
Speaking
Don't
of
let-
watching anime, what's our next anime?
Oh, yeah, our next anime.
Oh,
I wrote it
good
down.
call.
Sabikui Bisco. Is that how you say it?
Sounds right.
Now, is it just 1 through 13, or
It's a 12 episode anime.
Yep.
This was actually when it first started. Gamer Dad recommended this to us, one of our longtime listeners, and Jeremy didn't know that when he picked it.
Yeah.
I hadn't told him. My
I
bad.
just saw the visuals and I thought, oh man, this
Really?
looks really interesting.
this was your opportunity to be like, hey, Gamer Dad, guess what we're doing?
Yeah, I know.
Well,
We're terrible.
so Gamer Dad also has mentioned that it goes a little studio trigger, and I didn't want Jeremy to know that.
Yeah. Entrapment.
You fell for my trap card.
Aw.
All
No, I
right.
still want to see it because it's still interesting. I'll have something to complain about if nothing else.
But yeah, no, that is our next anime, and I've been looking forward to it for a while. It's been on our radar.
Yeah.
All right, spoiler section for real now. Man, where do we start? We start with Lena, whose real name is something Nelise. She was the major commander of the Spearhead last half. She is no longer in charge of Spearhead, but she has a new unit, and she's now the best commander. And it's because she just breaks the rules. She's like, yeah, well, I'm going to use the mortars. I'm going to use the defense missiles. You don't like it? Well, numbers look good because of me. And
Yeah.
if you fire me, your numbers don't look good anymore. We actually get this scene where she gets scolded of like, hey, you're using like military equipment to help the 86. She's like, yeah, do something about it. And it's no longer her uncle who's in charge. It is a new guy who got promoted and took his place. And you can tell she's completely changed because she has a stripe of red hair now in
I know.
her white hair. She has been
That
to the
cracked
Hot
me up.
Topics and she is ready to rock.
Yeah.
Well, she has a new call sign, or not call sign, but a new nickname now, Bloody Regina.
Bloody
Yep.
Regina.
hmm
And so yeah, she
She also got a demotion
yes,
because of what she did.
and she just long hair don't care.
Mhm.
And we don't get to see her very much. She does play very important parts of the story, but this is not her story. Surprisingly, if you remember how the first season ended,
Yeah.
she's not going to be our main character. I really loved her development from the last season, but what did you guys think of Lena?
I really wish there was more of her, but because of the direction of the story was going, I understand that they did this like protagonist shift, right? We follow this one character, we develop it with other characters, and then we just kind of go with these characters instead. I get it. I wish she was in it more, but man, does it pay off at the end. I love that her conviction turned into, this stunning commander that was able to rival the Legion, and not just because she had cool technology, but because she battle experience and her care for her processors turned into a real fire for destroying the enemy and saving her people. So I really like that.
Yeah, all of that. She was off screen for the vast majority of this season. So I really don't have too much to say, but yeah, it really paid off at the end.
Basically, everything I'm gonna say echoes Jason's thoughts, except for I lodge it as an official complaint against the anime that she was in it so little, just because her situation after the first season and the choices we have found out she has made recently was fascinating, especially when with the themes we dealt with about prejudice so much in that first half, and how she is just like bucking the trend. She's literally colored her hair in like a sign of defiance against, hey, yeah, who cares about the all white hair? Where she was, and this new attitude of like, you can't fire me, I'm too good. I really wanted to explore her situation more. I understand why she couldn't be the main character, but the little we got of her just seemed tragic. But Jason's also 100% right. The payoff is almost makes it completely worth it. All right. Moving on. We see our main character wake up in a hospital bed. It's Shin from the last season. He didn't die, guys.
Yeah.
The guy that had imagery of his head off. Yeah,
Guy who's-
he Deus Ex Machina his way out of there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so yeah, he wakes up. There's these government officials in hazmat suits who are like, "Hey, yeah, we found you guys after you got defeated by the Legion, and we saved you. And look, all your friends are alive, and they're all there in the next hospital beds over behind glass walls." And this guy comes in, and so we're going to talk about all these characters. But the elephant in the room is that, especially me, but I know Jeremy, you were on board with me.
Yeah.
All right, whose fault is it?
Decadence. I blame Decadence. That anime's twist was so good that I was like, "Oh no, you're not gonna get me this time, anime. This is the Matrix. I can see the code. They're actually brains inside of tanks, and this is just the indoctrination to get them to go fight
Yep.
against the." And there are also clues. Jeremy, you mentioned the OP, so I'll let you talk about the OP.
Oh yeah, the OP keeps giving this dichotomy of images where you have an image on the left and an image on the right, or an image on the top and an image on the bottom. And in these images, you have one of destruction and one of, well, not necessarily utopia, but at least of peace. And in some of them, it's like an explosion and a guy drinking wine and celebrating. In another one, it's the same cityscape, but it's destroyed, and then on the top, it's in good condition. And so it gives you this sense that you're being presented with two images, two ideas of reality. So one of them obviously would be the Matrix, and that would be the pristine one. You also get like how it's showing the tanks, and it's got like this glamour shot of the tanks, and then all of these dead soldiers standing in front of them, which presumably are the people who he's been carrying around the name pieces from. And instead of having heads on their shoulders, they've got heads in their hands, and they've got flowers sprouting from their heads. And in my mind, I kind of interpreted that as, you know, they're seeing something prettier than it really is, right? Their mind is being filled with images, keeping them pacified, the flowers. But that's not what it was. And so it was just a combination of a lot of that really made me think this is all fake. This is all trickery.
There's a scene coming up where they're kind of going about daily life in this peaceful city with no, like, they're anti-prejudice in this place, and it seems like paradise. And
Yeah.
for the 86, and it was like there was just a couple moments of like uncanny valley for the kids, and it was just like, no, this ain't real. Like,
Yeah.
this is too nice.
Yeah.
Like, well, okay, why I'm onto your show.
Exactly, especially since we didn't get any information lead up about this other country. We just heard, hey, there's voices. The voices are quiet over there. I wonder if anybody else has survived. And then all of a sudden you have a lab, and they got there in time to save all of them. And it's like, okay, this is too good. It has to be a story. It has to be fabricated.
Not so the clues, all the stuff you guys are picked on. Then they're like, eventually they're let out of the hospital. We're going to talk about the guy the president, but he's taken to their home, and they're like, "Oh, look, they're protesting how you were treated. There's a bunch of people who love 86. Just happen, 1 month later, have already organized in the street for you guys. And I was like, wow, that was quick. And then the other part was Theo was having trouble drawing. And I'm like, is that because he's now a computer and he can't be creative? They kept showing him just like staring at his paper. And I'm like, ooh, that's a thing. And then at the end of this episode, the president asks his maid, do you think people can be replaced? And she's like, yes, humans. I have to find, like, she literally says the word humans like she's not one. And
Right.
and we do that while we're staring at a reflection of her in a cup of coffee. And I'm like, well, that's the most computer dialogue I've ever heard. Clearly, we're in the Matrix. And if you remember last time we talked about this anime, I was like, no, I know that the Legion aren't actually AI. They're going to actually be people with white hair, and it's all going to be flipped reverse. And the anime was like, no, it's what I said it was. And again, the anime is like, no, I am telling you what is happening. Quit trying to think you're smarter than me. And touche, anime, touche.
Yep.
All right, but now we need to talk about these characters. So Shin wakes up. He's alive. He is our main protagonist right now, more than even last time. So your guys' thoughts on Shin in this half?
Man, his story, his exploration in purpose, because like he finished what he wanted to do like 3 episodes before the end of the last half. Like what I've never seen an anime character be more disappointed to be saved in my life.
Yep.
His story is so compelling, and I just love the deep dive exploration into there's this great conversation that he has where he's like, everyone's telling me about what they want after the war and where they want to go and what their desires are. I have none of that. So why am I here? Like, yeah, I really enjoyed this character.
He didn't resonate as much with me, but I did think it was really interesting to explore something that most anime don't ever touch on because, like you said, the characters reach their goal and then we're done with the story. And sometimes we have characters like Shin where the goal is the only thing they're living for. And we've wondered before, what happens to this character after now that they've done this? What are they going to do? And this anime did decide to follow that. And in his case especially was interesting because two factors of his story. Not only did he reach his goal, but he also finished carrying these people because he left the container with Fido in the first season, right? And that was like him saying, "Okay, I'm finished. This is going to be my end. This is where it's all over. I've carried you to the end." And his end was still on the battlefield. And so the way that this plays back in later, where okay, that wasn't my end. I have no idea what my end is now, and I've already dropped them off. There's now like a symbol of them, a memory of them, because they've erected a statue, or not a statue, but a big name
Wall.
Yeah, wall. Thank you. I want to say monolith. So yes, thank you, wall. and so they've been given honor. They've been given a resting place. And I mean, he holds on to his brother, showing that he hasn't completely moved on. He still has like, okay, I don't know what else to live for, so I'm gonna have my security chunk of metal with me that has my brother's name on it. But yeah, that is pretty interesting, and I do like what they did with it. So that was pretty cool.
I was born in it, molded in it.
Nice reference. Very topical.
I'm here for the pop culture.
There you go.
On top.
I don't get to complain about that though. I know.
Right. Ants. Give me a break.
What really, at first I was like, dude, we get it. Like they kept, how many people in this anime stop and be like, don't you think you should like try to live?
Yeah.
And him being like, leave me alone. You just leave me alone. They just kept having that conversation over and over. And that felt a little over the top.
Mm-hmm.
But later they start kind of peeling back the layers and revealing that it's a combination of the abuse he suffered at his brother's hands, who strangles him, blames him for everything, and then leaves him behind. And this gives him a huge complex about being abandoned. And then compounded now with everlasting survivor's guilt, because everyone he meets is like, I'm gonna die, and you have to carry on without me, and carry me on. And so it's not that he's suicidal, it's just that he wants to be done being left behind, and the only way to do that is to be the next one to die. And he's like, I'm sick of everyone dying, but not me, because it's just more and more and more abandonment. And the way they paid off at the end, well, I don't want to talk about it till we're at that scene, but that's where the emotional moment hit me. I was like, oh, that's so well done how they set this up. And it was a good theme. Again, I still kind of feel like we dropped the ball on the old theme, but this was a good theme to explore too.
You just wanted it to be Matrix.
I did.
I already admitted that. What are you doing? All right, so I want to talk about Ernst as well. So Ernst is the president of this country, and this country is. So what happened is there was the Empire of Guy. There was an empire.
Yeah.
So you need to know there was an empire. It's now a
Federacy.
Federacy, and these guys had come from the Republic, and they all have names, and I'm not gonna remember them. So the Empire was trying to take over a bunch of stuff, and so a civil war, a rebellion broke out against the Empire from within. Those survivors are now the Federacy, and then again, the Republic is where all the
86.
86 and the Alba.
Jessica.
Yeah, that's right. Jessica's. All the Jessicas live.
That's right.
So yeah, they're like, hey, yeah, we're the survivors of that. We had turned against that evil country that had started the Legion. We're way over here, and we found you, and we're totally not racist, so you're welcome to be here. But when we see them like in private conversations, they're like, we should probably just kill them. We don't know who they are or what they are. But this Ernst guy is genuine in that he believes in the ideals. He's the opposite of the uncle major general we had seen in the last half, who was like, yeah, ideals you can't make happen or are stupid to chase. And this guy's like, no, we are based on ideals, and we're nothing if we're not going after those. We're nothing if we're not upholding them. And I kept waiting for like the shoe to drop, but it never did. He was actually just a good guy who believed in the BS he was selling, and that was really cool, and I really liked him for that. But what did you guys think of Ernst?
I don't know. He almost was like too good to be true, kind of nation leader.
Sure. No, that's
like
we're Americans. We totally get that.
Okay, so right. As a character, I really liked him, but you don't become that kind of politician without some dirt or without some stomping, right? So it rubbed me a little bit wrong, and I was hoping that there would be a little more pushback or rebellion from his men that were fearful, because they set up a couple of the characters to be very like underhanded, right? But they didn't end up being. They just had a deep voice or something.
Yeah.
So,
and some of them talked about it, but what are you gonna say, Troy?
There's a little bit of supplemental information that I found out because I was having trouble keeping the country straight. You had mentioned like, hey, the world building's really great. And I'm like, I don't understand the world at all. I don't understand relationships between countries. So I looked it up. The reason he's in charge is he was the leader of the rebellion. And now he's the temporary president until they figure out what they're going to do.
Okay.
But because they're in the middle of the war, they don't have time to do that. But there is actually behind the scenes this big power struggle going on of nobody wants him in charge.
Okay, so that makes a lot of sense. That gives a lot of context to like some of the scenes and how it's going.
Yeah.
So that's why he can kind of strive for his ideals. He wasn't elected. He was just he's de facto.
He was the guy leading the fight, and so yeah, he's interim president.
Past that, I think he's a great like anime background dad kind of character.
I thought he was ultra cheese Like he was so cheesy. You have this relatively, I would say, very serious, but it definitely has its cheesy moments elsewhere too. But to bring in a character like that that's so drastically different was a bit jarring to me, especially because it forced them into this situation. It was almost like the writers were saying, "Okay, we've put these kids through hell. Now let's put them in heaven and see what happens." And I mean, obviously that's hyperbole, but it was such a it almost seemed like it was just this intentional, how far in the opposite direction can we go, and you wind up creating a character that is more difficult to find believable. Go
I-
ahead.
Yeah, I agree with you that he was tough to like swallow as far as a believable character. What I liked, however, was that exploration of what happens when you put child soldiers who have been through absolute hell and put
Mhm.
them into a loving, caring environment.
Yeah.
Obviously, they like as we see, they strive for the battlefield. Like that's
Yeah.
their home. That's what they know.
Mhm.
And we find out that the Ernst is told like, hey, we're not replacing our soldiers as fast as the Legion's replacing theirs. So we
Yeah.
may win today, but it's going to be a slow demise. And they're kind of at this crossroads where they're like, we don't believe in child soldiers, except you guys are really good.
Yeah. Yeah. We could really use you.
and they're like, hey, we want to go back, which is okay.
Yeah, they're begging to go back the entire time. But I agree with you, Jeremy, that he was a little tough to swallow.
Yeah.
I can happily concede that he's not realistic in any way, and I can definitely see how that would make him a little bit tougher to watch. But like I mentioned, with him being the opposite of the uncle general from last time, I just really enjoyed seeing the opposite side of that coin, because we had talked about when he expressed his views, like how frustrating that was. Like, whoa, that is completely BS.
Yeah.
That is nonsense.
Yeah.
Then to see the opposite side of the coin, and then he's trying to live up to those ideals through his actions, and how that helps, and how it chafes against the other military leaders who are like, can you not right now? We're trying to win a war.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right, so after a month in the hospital, they are released. They've had their communicators taken out of their ears, the para raid device that Lena had used to talk to them with, so that this new military can study it. They're also studying their juggernauts, and they're like, these are terrible, but also really efficient. And they're like, yeah, that's what they are. They are aluminum coffins that are really good at what they're made for. And then they are taken to Ernst's home. He adopts them officially, so he is now their father. So they have are legal members of this country, and we meet another little person that he has adopted, and it is Frederica, who has quite an interesting backstory herself. Um, she is the empress of the nation that built the Legion. She says she started the war, but they kind of call her out like, you're 10. There's like no way you could have done that. So I'm assuming she's just taking the blame for what her parents did. You guys' thoughts on Frederica?
I thought she was a good addition to the story. She's Jeremy. I know you liked her a lot. Why don't you
Mhm.
start?
I really enjoyed this character. She's spunky. She's got a lot of attitude. She's funny. But at the same time, those are the things that seem to match with her age. Sometimes she shifts into this like maternal mode that was very interesting and really weird too. Like you don't expect it. It's a little bit jarring. But then when you find out that, oh, okay, so she's an Esper. She's been reading people's minds, basically. Maybe not words, but at least images.
Jason, what's another word for that? Just
Um, I don't know.
An ex-
Technologically advanced.
An Xavier.
psychological something. So anyway, go on, Jeremy. Sorry.
Effervescent.
Okay. Um, and so maybe she's picked up some things from that because, it's possible that she learned some of the wisdom that she has from her training as an empress, as a little girl, but she's awfully young. I find that difficult to believe. Or maybe she's stunted. Maybe she's actually much older than she appears to be. I don't know. I doubt it. But the point was that it was interesting to watch, and she brought a lot of the scenes that were either for comedic relief or, in many cases, also for uh, helping to culture Shin's character arc, to try and pull him in the direction that he needed to go, to try and show him what he was being similar to, where he might go if his trajectory stayed the same, or at least what she saw. So yeah, I found her to be pretty interesting, pretty funny. There were a couple of moments that absolutely cracked me up, which I'll call out when we get there. There were also a couple moments that really didn't seem realistic, but it was good. She's a fun character.
She normally, these kinds of small, you know, little sister style of characters usually don't jive well with my tastes. And you get the cutesy, I'm throwing a fit because I'm a little girl scenes and all that, but yeah, the wisdom that she portrays, I can kind of hand wave because of the the mind thing. I don't know. What do you call that? Anyways, because if you think about it, if she can read your memories and she can read like all of them, she can almost live another lifetime through memories in that moment. And as she develops and as she ages, she's able to make more and more sense of it. And being a child, she has less inhibitions on what she's going to say to people. So, there were some moments that were funny. There were some moments that were a little irritating, but I actually found her really, really led well to good storytelling within the group.
As just a little side note, just because it's fun to think about these and explore them a little bit, I wasn't thinking of it as she had a different rate of reading than living. I thought of it as 1-to-1. So like she would have to give up some time in order to spend that amount of time viewing somebody's past, which would kind of imply that maybe she just did that instead of playing, but not necessarily going through their life in an instant. But the other is possible. That is really interesting. I hadn't considered that.
When she activates her powers, her eyes glow red, and I thought she was Fido reborn.
That one never crossed my mind.
It could have happened if they were in the Matrix.
I thought that was the nail in the coffin. They're like, oh, I got this. Frederica, Fido, both begin with an F. She loves Shin.
You're not getting this past me.
And her eyes glowed red, which is a big thing in the OP, that people's eyes glow when they're in robots. And
you know why they glow red? It's because it's a technological thing and not like a supernatural thing. I'm just saying.
That's
probably.
Before I give my impression of her, which will actually be pretty short, but I need someone to help me with the mascot / hostage situation that allows her to be on the battlefield.
Yeah, that's one of the things I didn't like. But I mean, I understand what they're trying to do. It's a convenient way for the writers to basically have her present in situations where she would normally never be present.
I got that.
It also creates a sort of, hey, these guys are so great, but what about this practice? How's this? So and they even call it out. They're like, we don't really like this, and we don't do it as much anymore. It's an old tradition.
So when they were rebelling, they would kidnap important figures and force them to be with the military units so they couldn't be attacked. Is that what the practice was?
No, it was to keep the soldiers from leaving the field, because if they left, they couldn't protect the little girls.
They would literally just take innocent children? I thought it was because she was from the other country, it technically counted as a hostage.
No, I think this was an empire practice, and it was part of the tradition. And so that's why, because the guys in the lunchroom, they were like, I thought we didn't do this anymore. This is a really old tradition. Why are they doing this?
And being such an old tradition, they've still got all the little chairs in the little room. Like, it must not be that old, but I guess honestly it hasn't been that long. It's only been a few years, and they've had other things to deal with, so maybe they just didn't clear them out. But still,
Okay. I liked her as a character. I didn't really like her purpose in the story, which is really to give us an attachment to a villain, which feels forced because it has to go through this extra character we had to force into the story. Last time the main antagonist would have been Shin's brother, and of course there's that connection of, hey, he strangled me once and then he abandoned me, and then I need to save him because it's the one thing I can do for my brother. And now it's like, hey, it's like your third cousin, but this girl knew him and she's really sad about him being out there. So that's the same. That's the same level of connection. Probably my biggest complaint is that the villain connection with Shin felt very watered down compared to last time. Like we should have
totally agree with that.
started with that guy and then do the brother.
Yeah.
Even though this guy has been a villain since the first half, he's made cameos or little hints that he exists.
I'll kill you.
I disagree with the way the story ended up playing out, because if it was his brother at the end, we would not have gotten the purpose exploration.
True.
The way that I saw it was his enemy is really just leaving the battlefield, right? It's just not something he's ever going to do. So I kind of saw this other character, this Killia, as being just another bot on the field. This one just happened to be a little smarter. So in that way,
and look just
I
like
totally
him
agree with
and
you.
have his have a slight familial connection.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, it's not really, he didn't seem like an important villain to me. He just seemed like a boss for the level.
Also, so we see these kids going on with their lives. They kind of living civilian lives. We see
Quite unhappily.
Raiden's like a delivery guy or moves furniture. Anju is in cooking classes. Karina shops a lot, and Theo doesn't draw like he should.
Oh, I love how they all have their skills, and hers is shopping. I mean, obviously hers is fashion, which is legitimate. That's cool. But just, you're absolutely right. Like, the way that it crossed my mind was like, oh, she cooks, he draws, he's got a job, and she shops.
She's good at spending money.
Yeah,
someone else's money.
I did want to talk about. I don't feel like anyone got a lot of character development except for maybe Raiden, but I wanted to talk about Raiden, Anju, Karina, and Theo from last time. What you guys thought about them in the second half? Jason, I think Raiden was your favorite character, so I'll let you start.
Yeah, his development. You're right. They didn't get much of an arc this time around, but Raiden stood out as an amazing supporting character, in my opinion, because not only did he call Shin on all of his crap, but he made Shin justify why he was feeling the way he was, why he was making the decisions he was. He was like, you are looking to leave. You're looking to leave at any opportunity. I can see it in your eyes. We've been together a long time. And yeah, and of course, during the quiet moments, his demeanor is just, almost comforting to watch. So yeah, I really enjoyed Raiden. And Karina, she was cute, and I wish there was more interaction with her and her feelings for Shin. We get a little bit of that, but unfortunately, it wasn't as much as the first half. And I do like, I like where it's going with he seems to, like, Shin seems to have this emotional connection to Lena, and Karina really doesn't like that because she wants to be that. But maybe in the second season she'll grow up a little bit.
Then he'll have his harem. No, I'm just kidding. It's not quite a harem anime. Yeah, I really liked that the laughing fox, Haru, I think that right?
Theo.
Theo? Theo. Okay. I really liked that Theo was not able to draw because it just showed how this was so far out of his comfort zone that he could not be creative.
Or
It's very tough to draw while you're a computer.
yeah. And so that was really cool. And other than that, I was a bit frustrated when they reused the same tactic later on, but these guys were just, I don't know, they were just there. They didn't really make a big difference to me.
we do need to address that because like at the end of last episode we like hit the brakes. We're like, we need to praise this for killing characters.
Yep.
And then twice in a row it was like, food you, everyone
Yes.
lives.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I mean, I really want to address it fully after we get through the second time.
I just wonder how many listeners who've seen the whole thing listened to us last time and were like, oh no.
Yeah. Oh, they're not going to be happy about this. And I wasn't.
the one I want to touch on was Corinna, just because I felt like she got pushed to an even farther back role because of Frederica's existence. Because there's an actual young, naive child with the group. The character who's representative of the young, naive trope doesn't really have any purpose right now. We actually have a real little kid, so.
Well, she was a good sniper.
She was.
Yeah, that's right.
I must have not picked it. Maybe I didn't pick it up, or maybe it wasn't really shown that they had like individual roles. Like Anju was the missile girl,
Right. And Theo is like the acrobat that plays in the
Right.
seascapes. Yeah, I didn't catch that the first season either.
When they did that this time, I was like, oh, that's pretty cool that they actually have like specific skill sets. And
Well, I know Karina was the long range
She was.
in the first half, but you're right. The others were like, I thought they were all Shin's backup,
Yeah.
basically.
Equivalent, yep. I will say that watching the way these mechs move just made me think of like Mech Warrior Online playing as a commando. You're just like, whoa! Running all over the place.
I thought of ants. Clearly,
Ants. Oh, yeah,
That's
with
definitely
cannons.
true.
Ants with guns.
We see Shin meet a young Alba, actually, whose name is Eugene, and he has a little sister. And they meet in the library, and they kind of get to some talking. And then later, Eugene tells him, "Hey, I'm volunteering for the military." And we start seeing like military parades and stuff. And so kind of the war has been kind of stalled out for Christmas, and now things are getting to ramp up again. And so our main characters are like, "Hey, life is boring. this isn't what we're here for. We're meant to fight, and so we want to go back to the war." And Ernst is against it. Frederica talks him into it, and then she's also like, "I'm also going," with that mascot situation. And the one thing Ernst says is like, but you have to go to officer school. You can't just become grunts. That'll help you live longer, I think. So they all enlist together and they leave together.
It would also give them opportunities when they got out.
Yeah. Also, Frederica mentioned, this is where she reveals her true identity, and that there's a knight. Her literal bodyguard, died protecting her. Well, didn't die protecting her. Protected her. Failed protecting her, and then he just wandered out into the Legion forces to die. So that they took his brain. He's out there, and so he's our antagonist. We see Shin piloting. He does crazy piloting, so he gets in trouble, even though it was helpful. He does like a flip to avoid crashing with a tank operator that messed up. And they're not juggernauts. And I'm not going to try to pronounce what this country is. This country is German.
Something leaf.
And so everything has like like letters I don't even recognize. I'm like, nope.
Yeah.
Not even trying. I didn't catch that the Republic was French. That they had French names. They're like La Morgare and stuff like that. Again, that came from Wikipedia
Milizé.
looking up countries that they were French based and this country is German based.
I did like how they had the argument of, no, it's the Bergen leaf, and it's like, no, it's a juggernaut.
It's a
Juggernaut.
Yeah.
All right, fine, it's a juggernaut.
Shin is in the same class of training as Eugene. Eugene is warned to stay away from Shin because he's dangerous, and all the 86ers are training with prototypes, which are based on their old juggernauts. Basically, they're stealing
apparently
the tech.
in training killed 12 people.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're a little intense. Yep, but they're better than the old ones.
At least they're aluminum coffins this time.
Yeah.
They're taking to the memorial site that we mentioned, where there's the wall with the names where Fido had died, and Federico reveals they rebuilt Fido. They built a new Fido and they put the old Fido's memory in it.
So even
Hooray.
Fido's death is undone.
Yep. Fido's
Apparently,
back.
he refused to turn back on until they mentioned Shin's name.
Yep.
Mhm.
Just
I
like
still don't know what in the world Fido is, because like he was there when Shin was a little toddler. So
Yeah.
what was he?
Well, if they're in the Matrix.
Yeah.
This is actually where my theory starts falling apart because I was like, Frederica is Fido. And then Frederica's like, here's Fido. And I'm like, wait. No. It's all falling apart.
No, we see how Shin comes across Fido on the battlefield as a child soldier.
Yeah.
In the
But
first
then
half.
we see footage.
No.
of
We
Fido.
see him go up to him with like destroyed tanks all around.
In the last episode, we see a bunch of recording just like we got in that episode where Fido died.
Right, where he's really small.
So it's all Fido. But we see one where he's a toddler and Fido's recording him in his home with his parents.
Which would have been before the 86 were ejected from the city.
How did he get those memories unless they're connected?
Well, I mean, Shin doesn't see himself,
But you're right. That is a little weird.
Yeah. It's like maybe his dad built him for him to protect him or something.
Shin gets his gun back. It's the gun he uses to shoot people in the head when they're dying. Then we see Eugene's unit get attacked, and Shin ends up saving them. And when they come back, they have lunch together, and Shin reveals that like all the 86ers have been split up. Their unit has been split up. This is explained later. Like, if we have them all together and just being awesome, people are just gonna not like them even more, and then we'll overuse them, or it's just better if we just kind of sparse them out and kind of keep them busy and spread out. So Shin's alone, and he has this lunch with Eugene and Frederica, and then when they get done talking, Shin's like, "Hey, the bad guys are coming," and then we see Eugene gets killed, and Shin does his Reaper thing to him, but what's really interesting, he takes this is messed up. He's like, take my sister's picture. So he has a locket with his little sister, Eugene does. And he has to walk over to where his hand is lying separate from his body to pick it up. And then Eugene's other friend shows up and he's all pissed off. Like, wait, did you just shoot him in the head? And Shin gives him the dog tag. And it's like, you take care of this. And he walks away. This is the first time we see Shin say, I don't want to carry this person on. He does not include Eugene.
I was totally expecting him to cut a piece of armor out of his mech.
Right.
He doesn't.
Which is showing that Shin, like, I don't want to do this role anymore. I don't want to be that guy anymore. That was good. Yeah. And then he's like, oh, I gotta go. There's another attack coming. So basically, they're on the front lines, and then eventually he gets posted to a base where Raiden also shows up. And they're like, yeah, they're pulling all this 86 back to the same location. Something's going on, and their leader, the official leader of their squadron, whose name is Wenzel, a young woman with short blonde hair. She actually like formally requests, can I put my unit back together again? And they're now called Nordlicht Squadron. Way better than Spearhead.
Well, they'll get that name back later.
Kind of. I honestly had trouble. Like, what do I call these 5? Because they're not all of Nordic Squadron. Nordic Squadron's a lot bigger. They're not the only 86 in the story. They're no longer officially Spearhead. There is actual real Spearhead out there.
We could call them the Nordic Tracks.
Oh,
Nice.
but
Hashtag not sponsored.
Are they still around? Yeah, they do the. Yeah. Yeah. Peloton really just kind of stole their thunder, though. There's a weird scene where Frederico is walking around in her nightgown, and everyone makes a huge deal about it for like 5 whole minutes,
Yeah.
and I was like, all right. She's like a 6-year-old little girl. Who cares?
It's a proper Japanese,
They're German.
thing.
Yeah, that's a good point. They're German.
But yeah, eventually they all do get reassigned back with Wenzel.
I guess it's that she's the Empress, but nobody's supposed to know that. So, like,
Yeah,
I don't know.
they're sent out to the Western Front, where that is, of course, where legions come from. Is the country to the west. We learn more about Kiri Nyozin. Now that is the villain's name, the knight that Frederica's.
Oh, I thought it was Kilia. It's Kiria? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now I gotta look it up.
What's with an R? Is it one of those R's you say with an L? That is a thing, isn't it?
The L and the R kind of share the same thing. So it's da.
Yeah, it's an R. Kiria.
All right. And then the last scene in this episode is Raiden telling Shin, like, hey, I know you warned those guys. You got to be careful. You don't want people knowing you're psychic. Because if people find out you're psychic.
Wait. Is that what they said?
I believe, yes, that it is confirmed he is psychic, Jason.
I'm pretty sure he said power.
Maybe you should never question me in the middle of a podcast again. Because a couple episodes later, they're just going to show it on the screen. Might as well have just said Troy is right.
I'm sure that doesn't happen. It's fine.
All right. Then we see the Legion beginning their massive offensive, which is literally this giant mass of them. They're splitting on the roads. They're going to every country. And there's 2 other countries over where the Federation is that they're allied with. All 3 of them are working together to fight the Legion. And then there's the Republic all by themselves on the other side of this whole thing. And the Legion are going to all of them. They just do not care anymore.
In fact, I think this is the first time we hear a non-human Legion voice. Is that right?
Is it No Face that you're talking about?
Yeah, No Face.
Yeah, we hear like this commanding voice, like all units move out kind of voice. And it's obviously somebody that's got great control over the Legion. I don't know if it's a human or if it's that is the AI.
That's all I was going to point out is we don't know who that is yet, but we also hear Kiri talking to him later and receiving orders from him. And he's called No Face.
Mm-hmm.
Shin wakes up Raiden and he's like, hey, there's a lot coming. Do not connect to me in the battle unless you absolutely have to, because I've been used to this for a while now, and this is overwhelming me. Like I'm struggling with how many are coming. The fight begins, and Nordlicht, of course, is already ready. They go out to the front lines and they're helping. And really, we just get some really cool in the middle of ruined city warfare between Legion. We haven't really had too much fighting up to this point, so this was really refreshing, and it's even prettier than it was last half. Production value went up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Well, all the Federacy tanks were all like brand new, and like the Juggernauts were just kind of these broken down, almost X-wing looking things, and these things from the Federation are just like shiny and like straight off the conveyor belts. Like,
yeah, it's like they shifted from World War II to modern day.
Right. We see, or at least Top Gun.
Yeah.
It's funny. They even in that meeting, they even pointed out what you pointed out last time, that these things were made for speed and agility, not safety.
Yeah. Yep.
Yep.
This is our first battle where Shin goes a little berserker mode, and literally Frederica she's always sharing his vision. She's always seeing things through his eyes, hacking into his brain with her powers.
Huh? Do you hack with being a psychic?
Yes.
Just asking. Just asking questions here.
Just wasn't there an old RPG, like a cyberpunk RPG, where you could hack with psychic powers?
Well, I mean, Shadow,
Watch Dogs.
but Watch Dogs, that's not psychic. What? Shadowpunk, or is it? No, Shadowrun has both, but they don't really.
They don't work together.
Not really. I mean, you can have a character with both.
Let's pretend they do, so Jason's wrong.
Okay.
All right.
I see how it is.
I mean, in the next anime, there's going to be someone who does it. The way
That's true.
I have a feeling in the next anime, though, we're going to have power levels based on emotion, which I'm just going to love watching Jeremy squirm.
Well, hopefully that won't be till the last few episodes, and so I'll have a lot of like, hey, this was great.
We'll find out. Again, this kind of becomes repetitious. Like he's not suicidal, but he's also super eager to not survive the battle. And Federico gets very upset with him. Then we jump back to Lena. Yeah, she's in this still. And we see a bunch of 86 dying in the 86 district, actually getting attacked by Legion. And Lena sees reports on the TV that, well, like a warning goes off on the TV, like, hey, everyone, emergency, emergency. And then all the drunk generals are like, what's going on? And she like instantly turns around and goes right back into work. And she's going to get to work. But her uncle stopped by and he's like,
this was such a great confrontation.
He basically is telling her like, no, you can't do this. You can't. I'm going to let the 86 in the city. They're going to defend us. He's like, they would never do that. We have been so horrible to them. There's no way they're going to come in here and risk everything for us. And she's like, I'm not giving up. And he picks up a gun and he tells her, I'm going to buy you as much time as I can.
And she has this moment of hesitation, like, am I doing the right thing? Should I stop him? And then she goes straight into, nope, I'm going to be badass, and like gives him a salute and like lets him go. I thought that was fantastic, because a lot of times anime will, especially with the female characters, they'll get all emotional and like, no, uncle, let me save you. And no, she's just like, no, let's get this done. We got a job to do. And I really like that about her.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting too, because in the end, the uncle stayed true to his the values that he had espoused, where basically he's saying, okay, I hope that you break and you have to suffer and see what the reality is going to put in front of you, like what the end is going to be, because it's not going to be pretty no matter what. And then he cowardly, which, I mean, honestly, it is honorable, but it's also cowardly. If he's a general, he has a lot more than a gun at his disposal. So we're either having to assume that he took the gun and now he's going to go and issue all these orders and stuff, or he took the gun and he's going to go out and fight on the front lines or whatever. But if she's supposed to be in control, essentially bringing in the 86 and whatnot, it just kind of seemed like he was going out to intentionally die so that he would not be there to deal with the decisions she was making, rather than leading those decisions himself. Which maybe wouldn't have been true to his character.
Maybe a little A, a little B,
Yeah.
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 What's really interesting is because he says that about you're going to smash up against your dreams and they're all going to be broken. She takes it as a pep talk.
Yeah, she's
like, you darn tootin' I am. Now let's get this done.
I like a challenge.
I'm going to smash him.
Yeah. Which I'll admit, left me a little confused. Like, did he say something positive or negative to her? Because she's acting like that's pushing her forward, but
she's just indomitable.
Yeah. Not only does she activate her pararite, she attaches a new, looks like a crown. Hey, symbolism. attaches
Queen
to
Regina.
it. And now she can talk to all the 86 at the same time.
And her brain doesn't get fried.
brain doesn't get fried. And she basically commands them, like, hey, come into the first district. We got a war to fight. Anyone who's willing to fight, please, I'm here to lead you.
Maybe she's got a similar power that this thing doesn't fry her brain.
Maybe. I think it's the tech, though, because her scientist friend is now a friend again.
The tech is literally made to copy the power. What? All right.
I'm just saying. That's how her brain didn't fry.
We see her. Yep.
If it was supernatural, it might not even work at all.
Yeah.
Literally
this makes sense.
This is psychic on the screen, Jason.
This is a soapbox I will die.
All right, we see her leading the defense. The Legion also get into the city. And actually, at the end of this episode, we see the city's lost. The Legion technically win. Then we come back to Shin, whose base has also been hit by the very same weapon that killed like the 6th and 7th members of Spearhead in the first half. The same orbital strike long range cannon that they were like, whoa, we didn't know that existed. It's back. I guess I assumed a little bit it was Shin's brother, but it's not. It's this guy. So he had a little bit of a cameo in the last half. And he blew up this base, but Shin's fine, and he managed to protect Frederica from the explosion. The one thing about
20,000 other people died, but he's fine.
Yeah, this cannon is super powerful. It cannot kill you if you're a main character. You are completely invincible to it.
Yes.
You can take it point blank and be like,
yep.
It tickled.
I did like that they end up having a theory on this weapon that it has to replace the barrel to fire again, and that just is not true. I actually like that they were wrong with their intel.
Yep.
The Federation does do a missile barrage on where the attack could come from, and they know they've damaged it, or they believe they've damaged it, and they have a limited amount of time to get out and destroy it before it's operational again. Now, if they can only hit the 2-meter porthole, not much bigger than a Womp Rat, but they can get it.
They can, if they use the force, psychic force.
Jeremy, I don't need you getting on this train as well.
Dog pile.
They also name it Morpho, so it will be called Morpho from this point on.
So is that Fido's brother? Never mind.
And Nordlick is chosen to be the unit who leads us. Now, there's a bunch of arguments now that start happening of like, hey, I noticed that those guys we're kind of racist against are the people we chose for the suicide mission. But there's also the compelling argument that they are the best unit to do that. And also we figured out that the one guy is psychic and can see when the enemy is coming. And so all these different
sure that's what they said?
Yeah. Yes. Literally on the screen. Shin.
But no. But in this conversation specifically.
Well, there's actually a bunch of conversations here, so
I don't remember in this conversation them to use the word psychic.
See, this is how you use technicality to debate.
There is a character there's a character in this whose name I never got. He's one of the top generals, and he's the skinny guy with the longer hair, and he's kind of like obvious a slime bag, but he also owns it and totally is aware of it and is cool with it.
Beep,
and
beep.
At the end, he's talking to Fido, going beep 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 beep, and I'm like, do I like this guy? Even though he's been a scumbag the whole time, but now
I liked his justification for being scum, because he says specifically, like, we want to take advantage of every tool and weapon we have. We want to keep every tool and weapon we have, and we're going to use the best one for the job. But if it breaks, it breaks.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was very utilitarian, his viewpoint. And I like that he used that kind of as a shield of, I'm doing really terrible things, but with good purpose.
But he also ends up like, oh, we are going to rescue them. And they're like, wait, I thought you didn't care. Well, no, I don't. We're just going to rescue them.
He's like, I don't care about their lives, but they're great soldiers. It would be a shame to lose our soldiers.
He also at one point goes up to Wenzel and is like, hey, remember how the guy you were going to marry died? Should have tried to marry me.
Yeah.
Like, just says that to her. And I'm like, you're a total scumbag. But also, I kind of think you're cool.
Ballsy, man.
It sounded like they've had history and like they were a thing.
Right.
And then she finally rejected him and went with this other dude.
Right. Who then died. And
he's like, well,
she's aware.
I'd still be around as your husband if you'd picked me.
That's so messed up.
Which is really interesting because like one of his arguments is the exact opposite of that, right? Like, so in this one argument, he has affection for her, right? Which would put him in a situation where he cares about a soldier that's on the field. Mm-hmm. And in this other situation, he does not have affection for these people, which is the rest of the population, right, of soldiers. So he's able to use them as tools. And that's a good thing. That's a valuable thing. This is the reason why you don't want to have nepotism in like a military unit or anything, because you can't put the preservation of a specific soldier or even a group of soldiers over the others unless it has to do with better unit tactical usage. So like seeing that was really interesting because I totally understand why he's making a decision that's going to put them all in serious danger and then only thinks of them as tools. That's very like, that's a military tactic. It's the right thing to do. You want to save them, but it doesn't mean you're going to be able to. But then to at the same time turn and be like, I would have married this soldier, just kind of is like, well, you're not as much of a pure tactics, pure machine logic usage of your soldiers as you think you are.
That's a fascinating thing, and I want to twist it a little bit to apply to the theme from the first half, which they do. That's what they're doing here too. So the 86 are obviously not hated for the same reason the Republic. Yeah, the Republic hated it for, but there is still prejudice against them. When we hear a soldier accidentally over the radio say like, "Oh, I hope those 86 die," or "those dirty 86."
Yeah,
because again, they see them as murder machines, monsters. They're not much different from the Legion. They're just kids who are raised to kill. We can't trust them. So when they're making these tactical decisions, they're like, "This is the most efficient unit," but also there is this underlying thing that how we all think about these people. Are we sure we're making this decision for A and not B? Kind of opposite of nepotism, right? Are we making this decision because it's the right tactical move? Or are we making this decision because we know these people have no families to write home to that when they die? Are we taking the easy way out? And they never come up with a solid answer, and it seems like everyone has a bit of a different answer, but it just kind of explores that idea of very much of what you're saying, how it's important not to care so everything can be balanced. But when there's now this underlying thing, this prejudice that runs deep, it's not even on the surface. No one's running up to them and saying bad things or treating them differently. But now every decision they make, they do have to question, is there prejudice in there, or did I make this completely? And when the theme came back, I was like, okay, this is actually pretty good. I thought this was a good exploration. Again, we're on episode 18. It's been gone when it was the main theme.
Yeah, there's like these little sprinkles of like images that have to do with it, but that's it, like billboards and things like that.
Right.
But yeah, even like in what you're saying there with a situation like that, the question is then like, if you stop and you think, oh, is it because of this prejudice, maybe subconsciously, then maybe you're going to wind up protecting them in order to counteract a prejudice that never existed in your head.
Which doesn't the one guy say to Ernst, when Ernst is asking him, like, remember you said you wanted him dead? Is that why you're doing this? And he's like, are you overprotecting them because of this?
Yes. Yeah. So you're absolutely right. I love that exploration. It's very cool.
I found it kind of weird, though, that a lot of the military guys that started calling them monsters was only after they saw them in this first battle, in this first wave of that came up, and they were able to just, the 5 of them just absolutely dominated the battlefield. I don't know about you, but if I'm in a war where, we're standing face to face, guns blazing, and people on both, people are dying on this side and machines are dying on this side, and we're losing attrition, and then this specialized group comes in and just starts wiping everything out, I'm cheering those guys on.
Yeah,
I'm
they're
not calling
saviors.
them, nasty names. Like, that
Sure,
didn't make a
but
lot of sense to me,
are
but
you
I
in,
get why they were like, wow, these guys are monstrous killing machines. Like, I get that part, but I don't know.
but does anyone invite Master Chief over for Christmas dinner?
Would he
Doesn't-
accept?
But that doesn't mean they want him dead. But yeah.
True. All right. So the mission is basically the main army is going to attack the Legion so that they can sneak around behind and get to Morpho. And Wenzel she gets permission to use this prototype. It's a hovercraft. They're like, it's a plane. It can only go this much off the ground. I'm like, okay, that's mostly a hovercraft. And it looks though like the Spruce Goose from what I remember how that used to look. It's just a
Goose?
giant mass.
What's the Spruce Goose?
Wasn't it the biggest plane ever built, but it couldn't actually fly? It was just in a museum. Wasn't that called the Spruce Goose? Don't worry about it. It probably
does say
wasn't.
This is not worth diving into.
Yeah, it totally is. But I do think that there's low air travel planes. I think that's a thing. I've
Okay.
seen it before.
So, but yeah, basically this thing's gonna fly super low, super fast, and then drop them right into enemy territory so they can go attack Morpho. Wenzel's like, I'm gonna fly it. Frederica's like, hey, I want to come along, and I'm really super worried about you. And I actually don't have many notes because there's a long conversation between Frederica and Shin, just going over every character point about him, just so we're all on the same page. He's freaking out because Eugene's sister is sending him nasty letters. But the mission starts. They launch. They get dropped. The ship is almost immediately shot out of the air after that. And they go and they start fighting the Morpho. And they're attacking it and they're winning. And then Frederica calls out, "That's not Morpho." and Morpho's on a mountain over there, and he fires at them and catches them off guard. But they do manage to dodge thanks to Frederica. And then Morpho or Curie is like, "Oh, there's that guy. I forget. It's another German name, but it's Reaper." He's like, "I see Reaper. I want to get Reaper. That was my job. I want to get Reaper." And of course, Shin's like, "Oh, I'm gonna go die fighting this guy. This is gonna be great." and they both
He gets
called
this
back.
creepy smile on his face when he gets lost in battle, and it's really disturbing because it's such a departure from what we know of Shin. Like, we know he's this standoffish, walls up, but it almost puts this gray tone over the shot, and he just has this just creepy, almost horrorish kind of smile of, it's go time. He even makes mention in a couple episodes later that this is almost peaceful. This is where I belong. And so yeah, and everyone's calling out to him and he's just ignoring everybody.
Yeah, the name that the robots and that Kiryu was using for him means one eye, and it's a reference to Odin. So it actually is kind of cool because the Juggernaut and now this new version of the Juggernaut, they always had that one eye. So it's pretty cool.
I do like that. They're both these cousins are not allowed to fight. They're both called away by their separate sides, and so Morpho though has to stay on the train track. So they're like, okay, we can go after it. We can follow behind it. And so the rest of the group they leave behind, but just the 86ers from Spearhead, they continue on the journey. After a while, at their first stop, they call and report in to that same creepy general guy I mentioned earlier, and they hear Jeremy, your favorite
Love
scene.
this. Yes, I love this. So they hear something happening from Fido's carrying cases behind him, right? And as they approach, you hear meow, 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 and it just gets more and more panicked and desperate, and then it starts hissing and everything, and you know that it's Frederica's voice, and it just cracked me up because she's psychic, so she can tell that they know she's in there, and her ploy is not working, but she's still doing it. in a little feedback loop there. And yeah, and so they open it up, and there she is. Boom.
So Shin gives her the gun. It's not just a gun, it's the gun, right? Gives that to her. So he's like, yeah. And then she has to ride with Raiden. And they're arguing about like someone should take her back. Well, the only person that could take her back is Shin because he could avoid the Legion forces enough to do so, because there's a bunch of forces behind them. And he's like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm going to keep going. So Frederica's forced to ride with Raiden. They stop at a train station for the night, and we get this really big conversation between Raiden and Shin, where Raiden basically calls him on his BS. He's like, "You're out of control. That last fight, you were going to get yourself killed on purpose, and we all can see it. You got to get your stuff together. You should take the girl, and you should get out of here. We'll do the mission." And Shin's like, "No, you guys should all go. I'll just go by myself."
Exactly that tone.
I'm not doing what you said. I'm just going to go do what you said now.
I'm the
Exactly.
boss. What I loved about this scene is the visual imagery underneath them while they're on the bridge. We're looking straight down at them, and there's two train tracks running side by side, but one veers drastically left all of a sudden. This anime does that over and over, and we also keep getting a scene of like a giant bug, like a fly, getting eaten by little ants over and over again. I'm not always sure what they mean. The train tracks make
what does the fly thing mean?
Well, it's either the attrition of the Legion versus humans. The Legion can make more robots before we can make more humans. Or it's that they all need to work together. Because they're the ants and he's the insect. But I don't know which one it is.
I took it as the ants were the people that he's been having to reap.
Oh.
And every time he reaps somebody, they take a piece of him with them.
I like that one
and
much better.
He's continually torn apart. And
That's nice.
Right now, he's just a husk of his former self, and everyone can see it.
Oh, I like that one. That's
also,
good.
crows. There's always crows around, symbolizing these characters. Like whenever there's two people talking, they'll show two crows, but at the end they become doves. And I don't get the symbolism of that.
Well, I guess Odin had two ravens, right? So maybe it ties more to that name. I have no idea.
Why doves? I don't know why the doves. Anyway, very cool visual storytelling, and I really love that you can give you something to chew on.
But like Aju, Karina, and Theo are eavesdropping, which there's a hilarious scene of Theo holding Karina. But they make mention that until that moment last half, when Shin pulled the rock face down to go fight the Legion by himself, until that moment, he was never overtly suicidal when he went to the battle. And something changed, something switched. And it's interesting that it happened right when they got their freedom. Like they got out of comm range. He'd done what he wanted to do, and he put his brother to rest. And now he's got basically as much freedom as he wants. And now he's just lost. And the only thing he knows is battle. And that's what I find really interesting about this arc is it's his friends trying to pull him back from that. And this scene on the bridge was so impactful to me. I loved Raiden calling him out and being like, dude, come back to us. You are not the person I know you to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's actually really interesting how like all of these characters, because they've all been child soldiers, they all have that sense of, the end is going to be on the battlefield. The end doesn't happen somewhere else. But during that time that they spent in the city, in the Confederacy, they all kind of had to make that decision to come back and prove that was what they thought, that their end was going to be on the battlefield. But now that they've been on the battlefield, they're remembering the Confederacy fondly. They're remembering, well, that was kind of nice. Maybe it would be cool to go check out the ocean or something else, And so it's starting to get them to think off the battlefield. And maybe that is something, I can't remember exactly if in the first season, I know that she asked like what they're all going to do when they get done. And some of them did have ideas, things that they wanted to do, but it seemed more emphasized this time when they had this big long talk about it afterwards about wanting to go see the ocean. And so Shin is like the only one that is left who still sees the end as being on the battlefield. And that, I think, is the major shift that has to happen, where the main character, not main character of the first season, Lena, winds up being the catalyst for changing that so that it's no longer on the battlefield.
He, after the discussion where they talk about going to the ocean, he's talking with Frederica again, and he's like, I just don't want. I don't want anything. And he's like, all I know is that they're all going to leave me behind again. That's all I can think about.
Yep.
Well, on this bridge scene, he Raiden asks him, like, why are you trying to go get yourself killed? And he's like, I wasn't trying to die. And he's like, yeah, but you weren't avoiding it either. And I was like, yeah, talk about calling him out. Oh, yeah, this was one of my favorite scenes.
In the next episode, they're almost to Morpho, and Legion forces are starting to come around them, and Morpho's actually been ordered to take them on.
One quick thing. This is the scene where he like thinks about the Major and then walks away from her and says goodbye, right? Because he's confident that she's dead.
I think that happened earlier, but that does happen in the story.
Yeah, that is really important too, because she's another person that left him.
Right, because they had heard about the Republic getting hit, and they mentioned her a few times.
There was one thing I think we missed. Killian wants to engage the 86 and just annihilate them in the battle before this scene, and he's called by the commanding voice we're talking about, the No Face. He's like, turn around, you need to come back. And he's like, no, I'm gonna get him. He's like, no, you come back. And they have to take remote control and like do a command to like, hey, stop rebelling, in order to get him to turn around.
So now the battle's on, but one by one, in a very tropey way, they all it's, hey, you guys go on ahead. I'll be the next one to stay behind. And we have to get through it so fast. It's like the next scene. I'm behind. Okay, I'll stay behind. Okay, I'll stay behind.
Yeah.
At first, Anju falls down, and so she's like, I'll handle everyone behind us. You guys go. Then they reach a city and
all the missiles.
Feels like I'm the best in the city, so I'll just stay in the city. And then Morpho starts attacking him with orbital bombardment, and Karena's like, well, I can stop that with sniping. So she gets blasted by the super cannon.
And she literally disappears off their radar. Like, she's gone. She's dead.
Well, okay,
dead.
so hold on.
No reason to question that she is dead.
They specifically called out that when the shot came over, it was disrupting electronics. So.
Okay. Medium. Okay.
And then Raiden's ship gets hit, and it's critically damaged, and his arm gets hurt. So they get Frederica out, and they put her inside Fido, or the case behind Fido. And then Fido's told to stay behind. So Shin then reaches Morpho, fights him alone. Frederica is calling out to him, trying to warn him, like, hey, he's a crazy pilot too. Even though he's in this big centipede-like tank, he's also like flipping it and spinning it like Shin would. So they're equals on the battlefield.
Which came out of nowhere, but okay.
Yeah.
Well, and also it's got these wings from a distance, but come to find out they're laser whips.
Yeah. Okay, so I wanted to touch on that because last time they fought the brother and he had liquid metal that he could use, and this guy has laser whips that he can turn into hands. And I'm like, why doesn't he have the liquid metal?
Yeah.
Wouldn't he also have that? But no, yeah, he has laser whips.
And why isn't he just turning into a T-2000 at this point?
Right?
Shin gets out piloted, but he's saved by Raiden, who's able to get there, and then is blasted by the super cannon.
Point blank.
Point blank. Again. Shin keeps fighting, and now I need help with this one. Guys, the missiles... Morpho gets hit by missiles from behind.
I swear those are from the Republic.
Right? Those
they
are the
look
same
like
ones.
Republic bombardment.
And I was like, oh, so was that Lena?
Yeah, I think so.
That was Regina. So this is where, because the Federation forces are still a ways behind. They're probably an hour out. And so Regina's forces show up first, and yeah, they start bombarding this thing. And one thing I wanted to, it is so visually cool to watch these missiles come in, like go MIRV, and then they turn into like little discs that fire down.
Yeah.
It's
Bullets.
cool looking, but what? That
Yeah,
does
I don't
not
know.
like that.
Look,
So
at this
much
at this point, the
extra
music's
complexity that
thumping,
just does not need to be there.
but the music's thumping, and I didn't
Oh,
care.
yeah.
I was like, this.
I
I
was so
was, yeah, it was cool.
Yep.
Frederica jumps out, and first we see him think he sees her, and then he really sees her, and she's like, "You're being an idiot." And then she puts the gun to her head, and she's like, "You gotta save me because you're the knight." And he reaches out to save her, and that gives Shin the opening to get in. He's got one shot left because his gun jammed. He's got one bullet. He jams it into the wherever the brain's gonna be. He fires. But then there's a predator self-destruct sequence.
Yep.
But he gets thrown away, but it seems like Morpho saves him in the visions, but then there's not, I never saw anything Morpho did to save him.
You're right.
Well,
Yeah.
one thing I need to understand about this scene is Shin has plot armor, and so
here's this thing.
The best was when Jeremy was like, "I'm kind of mad he didn't die," and I'm like, Shin agrees.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. So
He-
like this has been because okay, the explosion still goes off and Frederica is still like standing right in front of it, and we get that shot of her at the end of that episode being like, "Oh no!" and then boom, And so then we see Shin's inner thoughts of like everybody's dead, they all left me behind again, and we see like Raiden and all of his team, and we see Frederica is there. And I'm thinking, oh man, they're all dead. And they died one by one. There's no way they could have survived. Well, you know what? Fool me once, anime, shame on you. Fool me twice, anime, shame on me. I should have known. But it did fool me. I genuinely thought they were dead this time.
I didn't, because they didn't die on screen. Not a single one of them. Like, no one even paused for a second to be like, they died. They're just like, oh, they died. Moving on with the story. I'm like, yeah, that's not real.
They're not dead.
I didn't believe they were dead for a second.
I did. I thought
because there was too much plausible deniability, and all the important characters that died were dead on screen. So
I
but
guess that's true. I just didn't see plausible deniability when you have like the massive howitzer that took out an entire base in one shot, like 20,000 people in one shot, hitting this aluminum, now maybe steel coffin, point blank range. Wow, it just. But it also had a really good impact too. I thought, okay, so they saved them once before, so now they're gonna finish them off, and that's really gonna hurt, and it did, and it felt right for the scene.
All right. Shin has, while he's unconscious, he has a dream of all his dead comrades thanking him. Meanwhile, there's a shadow version of him who's like almost fourth wall walking through the animation cell being like, nope, you deserve to die. You're the worst. You have no reason to live.
That was cool.
Yeah. I was really digging it. This whole sequence goes very well. And then he wakes up and he's all pissed off. And then there's one legion left, and it somehow is also Kiri, and he's like, I had a little tank ready to go. You're gonna die, sucker. And Shin's face is like terrified, right? Like he's terrified, but he's also like, okay, kill me. And it was so bizarre. They're drawing him like he's like, oh no, but he's saying words like, here it comes. But he is saved. He's saved by Lena. Lena shows up.
and he's so disappointed.
Yeah.
He's so sad. He's like, it was my moment. You took it from me.
So he doesn't know who she is. She doesn't know who he is. He's inside the thing. And she's like, hey, why are you on the battlefield alone? Like, he's like, oh, everyone else got fallen behind, but you guys, you can come with us. We'll get you safe. And she's like, no, I'm not gonna quit fighting. I promised these people I would keep fighting. She means, of course, Spearhead. And she activates her para, which connects to his new para because his military has copied the technology. And there's been scenes, we skipped over this, he keeps hearing her voice in vital scenes. And it was actually her commanding her units when she activated the crown attachment, reaching their copied technology, kind of like, getting a little bit of static from the wrong station on your radio.
And he's thinking that it's the Legion version of her.
Right.
Which is just horrible.
Right. He realizes who she is, and she's talking about like why I have to keep fighting, and I promised these guys I would follow after them and find out what happened to them. And she reaches into her pocket, and this is so well done. He has kept his brother's name in his pocket, and in the same pocket she pulls out the picture of all of Spearhead that she keeps, including him. Which means, and they don't say this, but he's been carrying everyone, and for the first time he sees someone has been carrying him. Someone didn't leave him behind. Someone was willing to go with him. And he starts crying and starts bawling, and I got emotional, and I'm like, that's such a good dramatic tie.
I don't get emotional at anime, and this scene was rough. Oh.
And it's the picture and the drawing of her as a pig from the first half of the season that she found at the desk at the end of the first half. What a Hail Mary perfect catch.
Yeah.
From there to here to tie those two stories together in themes. Well done.
Yep.
And then he's opening his cockpit to let her know who he is. But then Legion are coming, so he shuts it, and he's like, no, I'm not going to tell her. And then a bunch of people come and rescue them from...
I love how he struggles to get the thing to stand up. He's got no bullets because he used it on the Morpho. His blades are destroyed. It's like, well, what are you going to do?
He's missing like half of his legs.
Yeah.
He gets a call from Wetzel. She's like, yeah, just so you know, everyone survived. And they're like, yay, we didn't abandon you.
And then a bunch of bullets come and like hit, and that's when the Federation forces finally get there and like take over the battle for them.
And they rescue Lena and her people. They rescue Shin. They rescue all the 86. And he's like, yeah, I don't want her to know who I am. And Frederica, who was protected from the blast by Curie, she shows up and she's like, oh, you like her. I saw you crying.
He's like, you were eavesdropping? She's like, psychic.
And it was kind of funny because Ernst is like, send her back. And he goes, I'll throw her in her box. she's going back.
And then when they get back to the base, everyone's making fun of Shin. They have a recording of him talking with Lena.
So rude.
They just like dead eye stare at him, play the recording.
See, and that's where, like, as much as I'm complaining that they did not kill them twice now, it worked so good this way. You had to leave them alive because it had to be that, these people that he thought he was carrying because he thought they went on ahead of him didn't. They all survived.
It's Christmas again. Our main characters, the 86, return to Ernst's house. They'll tell him they're home. They're recognizing that this is now officially their home. And they go back to their kind of civilian activities. Shin even learns how to cook. Now, they've pointed out Shin can cook. He just doesn't care. Like, he doesn't care about flavor or anything, so you don't want him to cook. And he actually sees him trying for the first time ever.
He had eggshells.
Yeah. What is it? Anju's like screaming at Raiden. Like, look, he cares. He cares.
Yeah. It has good taste.
And then Ernst is like, I know you guys want to keep fighting, so I'm proposing we make you a special unit of you guys, and you're gonna have this foreign commander. I don't know if this is gonna work. It's this weird foreign commander, and they all see the name. The anime tries to pretend like it's being coy, like who could it be?
Yeah.
But all the 86 are like, yeah, that'd be great. And then we get a scene of Shin visiting Eugene's grave and talking about how, like, I still don't want anything, but I know they all wanted something, and so I can fight for what they want for now until I can figure something out. And he has a nice scene where he gives a picture to the little sister, and also the other friend who had gotten mad at him is like, I'm the one who made the little sister write mean letters to you because I was so mad at you. And so they make up. Shin also puts his brother's name with the rest of the other names that he had left behind. No longer carrying anybody. There's a discussion about his insignia on his tank and how they're going to change it.
Uh-huh.
And at the end, it looks like it didn't change.
Yeah, I thought so too.
It did not. See, he finally decided he was going to accept it as I'm not the Undertaker anymore. I'm the Reaper. And
But it says Undertaker on it.
does it actually have the word?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe I interpreted it wrong, but basically there was a little bit of a back and forth, and he finally decided I'm going to accept it, but under my new meaning. I'm not going to be carrying people anymore. I'm just going to be reaping the Legion, basically.
Then we go back to the Republic. And we see Lena collecting. Well, she collects all the pictures she had drawn of Spearhead, and her cat. The cat survived. We also see how things are in the Republic. So all these colored hair people serving food to the homeless now Alba, who were like, "Can't you give me more? You're not treating us fairly.
It's not fair."
And it's just all like, if looks could kill.
I did love that. Like, all the people behind the counter are looking at him like, really? Did you really just say that right now?
Yeah, they even use the term equal. Like, can't you treat us equally? Come on, guys.
Lena is assigned, surprise, surprise, to the Federation. She's going to get her own special unit. We don't know who it could be.
Oh God, I love.
She's going
the
too?
pictures. I love the pictures on his desk. So this superior officer of hers, when you have the people from the Federacy have come into his office, and he's now having her come into the office, and he's like, "Yeah, we're going to assign you over there. We need a foreign representative, a foreign commander." It shows you the pictures on his desk. It's like him, and he's got the big politician's grin, and he's got his arms wrapped around a couple of 86 kids that are both like scowling at the camera, but he's got this massive grin, and then he's got this other grin and it looks like he's with his family, but it's a woman, a colored woman, right? She's got the colored hair, and then a kid, and both of them look upset too, and he's got the same dumb grin. I was laughing so hard at this.
So yeah, she's also has a conversation with Annette, her scientist friend from the first time. She's had a few scenes, but that's about it. And they're testing out the para raid, and she's like, "Oh, their para raid is based on ours. The only way they could know that if there was 86." Again, we're really stalling. What's obviously coming. But Annette reveals, "Hey, I'm also going with you to the Federation. You know, you need me to work on the para raid, so I'll be coming." And then she's taken to the memorial where Fido had died, where the names are put. And she puts her own box there next to it with the faces. And she's like promising she won't forget him. She won't forget him. Meanwhile, then we see Fido recording, and all the 86ers of Spearhead are like, "Oh, this is going to be great. This is going to be hilarious. We're really going to mess with her." And my favorite is Ernst is like, "A boy meets a girl." Like he's got high hopes for he's shipping. I love that there's a character shipping in this. Anyway, then the scene plays out just like you'd think it would. They go all and salute her, and she's like, "Hey, I'll be your commander." And they're like, "Yeah, we all know you. It's us." And she starts crying.
Yeah.
And says hi to everyone and gets to finally meet them for the first time.
I'm not crying. You're crying.
And then, and one of the coolest ending final frames is like her hand and Shin hand. We just see the shadows of them, like they're almost like they're reaching for each other. But his makes an 8 and her makes a 6, and so you see the 86. That's very cool. And that's the end.
Actually, I love Federica's photo as like the end shot as it fades to black. Yep. That was really cool.
What was it? I don't recall.
Huh? So she, right after the 86 shadow thing, Frederica is like hanging from Fido. She's like, "Let me take a picture." And we never see the picture until the literally last 2 seconds of the episode.
Gotcha. And guys, Frederica likes to take pictures and has red eyes, and Fido recorded everything he ever saw. How are they not the same person?
This is just a really long con by the Matrix.
All right, let's go to our final reviews. Jason, your thoughts?
I have some nitpicky things. I'm not going to go over them because I absolutely loved this anime from start to finish. I love the first half. We explored oppression and child soldiers, and in this one, we explored depression and the child soldiers again, but also like acceptance of oneself, plus the really cool character building. For this part, I'm definitely giving it a 5. For the whole thing, I give it a 5. I love this anime.
So I'm also giving it a 5. I really liked it a lot. There were some things that I thought, especially when we started into it, that were going to bug me more. Namely, the fact that these characters didn't actually die, and then it used the same technique to make me think they were going to die again. But in the end, the anime was better for the decisions that they made. They wound up making other scenes and the general theme more impacting at the end. So I have to give it kudos for that. Really, really enjoyed it.
I almost docked it a point because they put the word psychic, but
Literally
I'll
on
let
the
it pass.
screen.
Yeah. Oh, I did want to mention one thing that irked me a lot. The subtitles were very hit or miss. There were a lot of times that the grammar was like really bad in several scenes, and there were also a lot of situations where like you would have a character that's clearly like a male commander, and they would say, "Oh, it's them," and it was just really weird because in my head I was wondering, okay, is the person who's actually doing the localization of this, are they maybe not as good as Crunchyroll usually puts out? You know, what happened to the usual staff? I don't know if it's Crunchyroll or if it's the studio or whatever, but that really bugged me. But it's still not enough to take a point off.
My biggest gripe is this: the kind of they abandoned their earlier theme for the most part, and then were a little ham-fisted on their new one. They also landed it so perfectly that I almost forgive all of that. So I'll give it a 5 again. It's a low 5. I'm teetering, but it's still a 5. Enough for visual alone. The amount of artwork and just the fact that every background shot you could look at it and be like, what does that mean? And the fact that they cared enough to put thought into it. Maybe who knows which one of us was right. I think it was Jason about the ants eating the fly. But just the fact that that's something to chew on. They had that thought to animate that for no reason.
There was that scene where they're standing in front of the wheat plane and the wind going over. They're talking about it looking like the ocean, but here's Shin over here, and literally everyone else plus Fido on the right hand side, and like they were right in the middle of him isolating himself, and it's just like, oh, it's so perfect.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
On a visual level, this is probably one of the most impressive we've seen in a while. So that was very much enjoyable. So definitely worth a 5. All right, our next anime is Sabikui Bisco. It is again just a 12-episode anime. We'll be talking about in our next episode. If you have thoughts on 86 Part 1 or Part 2, feel free to reach out to us on our Twitter at Baka Podcast or our website, the animebakaclub.com, or leave a comment wherever you found the podcast, and we'll be happy to respond and add you to the discussion. We always like to do that. And until next time, I think it's time to say goodbye.
Thanks for listening.
We'll see you next time.
Sayonara.